My channel. My name is Nelly. So today's video is a bit different from the other two videos I did. In today's video I'll be showing you a lot of documents, so that's why I chose to share my screen for this video. So the focus of today's video is how to apply for the MEXT scholarship, and as you can see, this is study in Japan for free 3. So that means there's a 1 and there's a 2. So if you've not already watched the part 1 and the part 2 of this study in Japan for free series, then I'll recommend that you should watch those videos, because this video will just be continuing from those videos. Also, before we continue, let's just welcome the people who came here after watching the first two videos. So I've had a lot of people come here because of that, and I'm really happy having you. I've equally gotten a lot of messages and emails from you people. So if as of now I've not been able to respond to your email, don't think I'm ignoring you. I'm just dealing with a lot of messages right now, and I'm trying to respond to them as soon as I can. So if I've not gotten to you, don't worry, I'll soon get to you. But in the meantime, I created a Facebook page where I will be posting links to documents, and I'll just be interacting a bit more with the applicants. So if you've not already joined that page, then I'll recommend that you join that page so that you get up-to-date information with what is going on. So now that we've spoken about all of this, let's move right into the video. So the very first thing I'll be showing you would be a Word document. So I created like a to-do list sort of. So you have the to-do list for undergraduate students and then the to-do list for graduate students. So I'm just going to take you through that in a bit. So the very first thing that I suggest you start working on is your recommendation letter. I've gotten a lot of messages from people, both undergraduate and postgraduate students, who are asking about the application letter, who are asking about the application form. The application form is very important, but for me, at this point in time, there are some things which are a little bit more important that you should start working on them as soon as possible, as opposed to you working on the application form. And one of those things as an undergraduate is your recommendation letter. Sometimes getting someone to recommend you can be a little bit difficult. So as I'm talking with you right now, you need to be thinking of who is going to recommend you and start making plans to contact the person as soon as possible, so that you get this sorted out and then you can work on some other things that you can control. Because trust me, getting the recommendation letter, sometimes it doesn't depend on you. You might be willing for someone to recommend you, but you just don't find the person to recommend you. So you have to work on that as soon as possible. So I will show you what the recommendation letter looks like in a bit, what the sample provided by the MEXT looks like, but they don't expect you to follow that exact format. They just gave a sample, so I'll show you that in a bit. The next thing that I think you should also work on is your transcript. Excuse me. So depending on where you studied, it might be easy or difficult for you to get your academic transcript. So I'll equally say that you should ensure to start working on these things as soon as possible. The next thing is your certificate of graduation. So for those who, I don't quite remember if I got the certificate of graduation when I was in high school. I don't think, but your advanced level certificate can work in this case. And then if you have a certificate showing that you're going to graduate soon, you should also provide this certificate. And if you already progressed and went to the university, then you should provide the certificate of enrollment showing that you are a student of that university. Then when you have submitted your application for this, so for these first three things, I think you can work on them between Monday and Wednesday. So by Wednesday, you should have already met your referee or the person recommended you and told he or she about what they are supposed to do. Should have probably gone to your school, placed your application form to receive your transcript, and made your request to get your certificate of graduation. And when you have done that, then you come and work on your application form. I'm not saying you should do this and then you sleep and wait till you receive these documents before you proceed to getting the form. No, I'm just saying, first of all, this is what you should work on, and then we work on the form. I'm going to show you what the form looks like also. And then lastly, you have the medical certificate. I'll also show you what the sample looks like. So let's move to postgraduate studies. So for me, the very first thing you should work on is your research proposal. So sometimes research proposals can take from a week to 2 weeks to write them. So I would say that you should start thinking about your research proposal, what your research theme is going to be like, and what the structure of the research proposal will look like. Also, there's a form called the placement preference form, and then this form requires you to write the name of the university, the name of the major, and then the name of the professor. So we'll try to contact professors as well. I'll explain more about that soon. And then also we have the recommendation letter, like I mentioned here. You have the transcript, you have the certificate of graduation. So these things, you should be working on them as soon as possible. So while working on your research proposal and while contacting professors, you should maybe go to the school that you graduated from, or contact the professor that supervised you, ask them for a recommendation letter, get your transcript, or apply for your transcript, and then apply for your certificate. So this also, I think by Wednesday you should be able to have applied for these three, and then you're just working on the other things. And then the next thing, of course, is your application form. You have your placement preference application form, and then you have the medical certificate. So this is just the list that I put together of how pressing I think you should start working on things. So it's just my idea. It's not an ideal situation. It's just me thinking that this is how you should be working on things so that you can be ready before the deadline. So let's move to something else. So this is the application form for research students, and I'm also going to show you the application form for undergraduate students. So I'm going to leave the links to these two forms in the description box so that you can easily get to them. So this is a form, or this website is an approved site by the government for studying in Japan. So I've gotten a lot of questions from people asking me how legit is this scholarship, and this is too good to be true. So let me just put it out here now that this scholarship is not different from any scholarship that you get to study in the US, the UK, Australia. I mean, you have fully funded scholarship in so many countries in the world. But then the difference is, in this case, you're coming to study in Japan. So there's nothing extra about this scholarship. There's nothing that you have never seen before. It's just the fully funded scholarship that you get to study in Japan. So I just thought I should put that out there. So I would like to note a few points before I get to start showing you the forms. So the very first thing is that you should not send any documents directly to MEXT in Japan. Rather, your documents should be sent to the Japanese embassy in your country, or they should be handed in the Japanese embassy in your country. So every country's Japanese embassy, or every Japanese embassy in every country has their way that they choose to accept the applications. For some that I've seen, they only accept you handing in the documents. Others I've seen they accept post, and then I've seen one where they accept email. So you should check with your embassy to know how they expect documents so that you don't have any issues. And also you should check with your embassy so you know when the deadline for the scholarship application is. So right here you can see list of websites of Japanese embassies, consulates general. So if you click here, you can easily find out the Japanese embassy in your country. As you can see, it's divided. You have Asia, Pacific, North America. So I'm from Cameroon, so I'm going to find Africa and go there. So okay, so this is Africa. So Cameroon, Embassy of Japan. So you click and you scroll for a bit. So this is a Japanese government scholarship for 2022. So it was launched on the 5th of May. So you just click and then you get the documents. So application guidelines, this is for research program. So if you want to get the application guidelines, you click and then it takes you back to this form. But now we are on the site for research students. Or if you want to know about undergraduate program, this is it. You click and it brings you back to our original form. Or if you're interested in College of Technology, which I have not really spoken about, but you can read about it. So you can go to the application guidelines and click, and it's going to take you to the College of Technology. So I'm going to go back now. Oops, okay, I'll just close this page. And then, okay. Okay, so that's the first thing you should note. And then the second thing that I want you to note is that these documents can be printed out and filled in by hand, typed out, or filled in with a software application and printed out. Personally, I prefer the second option. So what this means is that you can print out the documents and then fill it by hand, or you can just fill it with your computer software. But my personal preference, like I've said earlier, is this, because with this you can limit the amount of mistakes you make. I mean, if you type something wrongly, you can always just delete and then you type in the new one, as opposed to this, if you print out the document while filling in, you make a mistake, you probably have to go again, print another copy, and it's just sometimes a little bit more troublesome. So I prefer this if you can do it, but if not, then you should do this. In Japan, most times when you're filling in documents, you use the black ink. I mean, it's not specified here, but in Japan, most times when we are filling in documents, we use black ink. So I just thought I should mention that to you. So let's look at the list of documents. So the very first thing is the application guidelines. So you have it in English and you have it in Japanese. If you can understand Japanese, then you should click this, but I don't think many of my viewers from countries other than Japan can really understand Japanese. So I'm just going to go to the English side. So you click this, and then it gives you all the information. So explains what the undergraduate program is, tells you the fields of study, which I already spoke about in my previous video, but you can go through it if you haven't already. Tells you other things which you should read, tells you about direct placements, tells you about the qualifications and conditions that you should meet to apply for the scholarship, tells you about things that can make you to be non-eligible, tells you about the period of the scholarship benefits, suspension of payment of scholarship, so things that might cause you to get your scholarship suspended, and then tells you the selection criteria and then the documents that you have to provide. So I will just say that you should go through these documents on your own. To be honest, most of the questions that you might have for me would already be answered in this file. Like, Japanese are that detailed, so for the most part they will try to answer as many questions as possible with this. So I think you should go through it if you're really going to apply for this scholarship. But now let me just take you through this checklist. So before you submit your documents, you should ensure that you have submitted the documents which are indicated by this white circle. So let me read a note here. So it says documents indicated by the white circle must be submitted by all applicants. So this must be submitted by everyone, but documents indicated by the black circle should be submitted only if applicable. So the ones in white circle are compulsory, while the ones in black circle are only if you meet that particular category or criteria. Okay, so I'm just going to take you back to the previous form. So the next thing we have is the application form, which everyone has been asking about. So this is what the application form looks like. So just like this. So it's 4 pages long. Okay. So the next thing we also have is the direct placement preference application form. So in this case, so let's go back to the application form. So for the direct placement preference form, sorry, I needed to indicate. So as you can see, it's in black circle, so it's not something that you must submit. It's not obligatory. It is if only if it's applicable, that's when you should submit. So let's read a little bit about this direct placement form. So number 5, oh sorry, I think it was at the top. Give me a moment, please. Okay, so applicants who have sufficient Japanese language proficiency may choose to enroll directly in their university without taking the preparatory education course. So if you've studied Japanese before, then you can move ahead, but if you've not, then you don't need to fill the form. So that's it. So as you can see on the form, they ask you for your name and your gender and your date of birth and the universities that you choose for direct placement and other things. But then the note right here says direct placement is the system whereby the requirement for preparatory education before entrance is waived and direct admission to a university is permitted if you have sufficient knowledge of Japanese language and there's no necessity for preparatory education. So if you study Japanese, then you don't have to, then you can come through direct placement. But if you've not studied Japanese, then you don't have any business filling this form. After all, it's not even a compulsory form you should fill, so you can ignore this part and fill the other forms. So the next form that we have is the certificate of health. So the note here says it must be filled by a professional medical doctor. So a professional medical doctor must fill this form. So let's click to see what the form looks like. So you have your name. So surname is your family name. So your family name, your first name, and then your middle name, and then your gender, your date of birth, the year you were born. It's the same thing. Okay, you have to write it like this. So the year, you have to write the month, and then the day, and then the examination you have to take. So you have to do a chest x-ray, blood pressure, body type, weight, everything. Oh, blood type, sorry. So everything has to be measured like this. Yes, okay. So you have to do all of this. So this is what the certificate of health looks like. That's what you have to present to the hospital or to the doctor who will be examining you. So this is to be completed by the examining physician. Please fill it out in Japanese or English. So it must be filled in either Japanese or English, not any other language. And then we have the recommendation letter sample. It says this is a sample. Any form or style of letter is to be accepted. So let's open to see what the sample looks like. So for the sample, you have to write your family name first, your first name, and then your middle name. So to the applicant, if you choose to use this sample, please fill in your name above and on the envelope marked confidential. So the envelope, on the envelope, you should have it written confidential and addressed to yourself. Okay, confidential, and your name should be on the envelope. Confidential and addressed to yourself, to the person you have asked to recommend you. Okay, ask this person to place the completed form in the envelope, seal the envelope, sign across the envelope, and send it back to you. Submit the unopened envelope with your application to the Japanese embassy or consulate general. So what this means is that you shouldn't see what this person has written about you. So you should just give the person an envelope with your name written. Like, you should fill out this form with your name, that's all, and then you put this form in an envelope which is written confidential and addressed to you. And then when this person is done filling this form, they would put the form back inside the envelope, seal the form first, seal the envelope first of all, and sign on the envelope, indicating that this envelope has not been opened. If there's no signature on the envelope, or if it looks funny, then it means it has been opened, and it means that it's not going to work towards your application. So it must be as confidential as possible. When you get this envelope, Please do not open it for any other reason or for whatsoever reason. Just hand it over to, or sorry, just put it alongside your other documents, and then you take it to the embassy when you're submitting your documents. So if you choose to use this style, so the person recommended you has to respond to the questions, the person has to print or type, and then after completing the form, the person has to place the form in the envelope, seal the envelope, sign across it, and return it to the applicant. This recommendation is a required part of the application process and to be used for admissions purpose only. Okay, so that's for the person recommending. So this is just a sample, as it was said, but any form is accepted. But ensure that you don't tamper with the envelope. Ensure that it's signed as well at the back, and ensure that it's written confidential and addressed with your name on it. So if you have any question regarding that, you can also ask me. So okay, so now let's move to the graduate side. So for graduates, it's the same thing. So you should not send any documents to the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology in Japan, but rather you should send it to your embassy or your consulate. This is the list of the consulate or the embassies. And then documents can be printed out and filled in by hand, typed out, or filled with the software. So what documents do we have? We have the application guidelines, which you should read. You should not skip through anything. Read everything so that you fully understand what the scholarship is all about and what the scholarship expects of you. So I'm just going to show you the checklist. So the very first thing that you're supposed to do is to fill an application form. And then the next thing is a placement preference application form. The next thing, you have the form for the field of study and research plan. You have your academic transcripts and academic transcripts. You have your certificate of graduation if you've graduated, or certificate that you're attending school if you're still to graduate, or the certificate of the school that you graduated from. Okay, you have the recommendation letter that must be done by the president or the dean or the academic advisor at your current or last university. You have the medical certificate, and then these things in black dots, they are not compulsory, but if you have them, then you should provide them. For example, if you have your thesis, you should provide the abstract. If you have a certificate showing that you're proficient in English or in Japanese, for example, then you should provide it. But if you don't have it, don't worry. If you have a recommendation letter from your employer, you should also provide it. But it's not compulsory. And if you're going to be studying something related to art, then you can show a photograph of your work. So these ones in white dots are compulsory. Why the ones in black are not compulsory. You only submit them if it's applicable in your case. So I would say you should familiarize yourself with this form so that you get to understand everything about the scholarship, like I've already mentioned. I'll put the links to all the forms I mentioned in the video. So let's look at the forms one after the other. So the very first one is the application guidelines. I've explained about that already. So let's move now to the application form. So this is what the application form looks like. So there are instructions here on how to fill it. You should write neatly by hand, use Arabic numbers, write years in Western calendar, for example, like this. And then write proper nouns in full with abbreviation. So if you're going to write, you went to maybe Presbyterian High School, you should write Presbyterian High School, don't write PHS. So yeah, that's it. So this is what the form looks like. 6 pages long. Okay, so the next thing is the placement preference application form. So you have to write your name, you have to write your gender, your nationality, date of birth, your age as of 2022 April 1st, You write your field of study in Japan. You write your desired field of study in Japan. Oh, sorry. You write the field of study and then you explain the detailed field of study and then the university you wish to attend. So I will put a list of universities so that you can have access to that. So you have to write the name of the university, the name of the graduate school of science, graduate school of engineering, and then the professor. That's if you've contacted the professor, then you can write his name, but if not, you can leave this part like that. Or her name, sorry. And then also you have the certificate of health, which must be filled by a professional medical doctor. So let's click to see. So this is what the certificate of health looks like. So you have to do all of these tests and the doctor has to fill it in. Actually, I think I skipped the form. I skipped this. So let's look at the field of study and research plan. Okay. Oops. So this is what it looks like. Okay. So this is what the document looks like. So you have field of study and research plan. So you have to write your name, family name, first name, and then middle name. So it says guide for creating a field of study and research plan sheet. As this sheet is one of the most important references for selection and university placements, outline your field of study and specify your research theme and plan in line with the following items 1 and 2. If plagiarism or fraud is discovered after selection, the selection will be cancelled retroactively. So you should be careful not to copy anyone's research plan or write-up. You should write your own. It should be authentic. This sheet must be typewritten or written in block. If possible, please write in Japanese. If it's not possible, you don't have to worry. If you don't know Japanese, don't worry. I mean, when I wrote my research plan, I didn't write in Japanese, I wrote in English. So for that, you're safe. You can write in English. This sheet must be created within 2 pages. Additional materials may be attached if necessary. Both a single side and dual side printing will be acceptable. So here, past and present field of study. So what you studied in the past. So for example, what you studied for your bachelor's degree, and if you're already enrolled in a master's degree program, what you're currently studying. What your research is going to be focused on, what the theme of the research will be about, and what your research plan is. So what do you intend to do for your research? So you have to write this here. If you have any question, you can ask me. So the next one is recommendation letter. So before I get here, so this is a sample. Any form or style of letter is to be accepted. So they don't expect you to do exactly this, but you can use this, but any form can be accepted. But there's something I wanted you to note. So if you're going to use this style, then you should just fill your name. But then if not, then the person can just write your name on the form. But then something that I want you to note is that if you're going to use this, then you should fill your name. As I said, give this form and an envelope marked confidential and addressed to yourself, to the person you have asked to recommend you. Ask this person to place the completed form in the envelope, seal the envelope, sign across the seal, and send it back to you. Submit the unopened envelope with your application to the embassy, to the Japanese embassy or consulate general. So whatever style you're going to use, it should be in a sealed envelope, and the person recommending you should sign across the envelope. So it shouldn't be unopened, and it shouldn't be opened. It should be unopened, and it should not come without the person's signature, showing that it is a confidential information, because if it's not signed, then they are not sure if it's the recommender who wrote the recommendation letter or not. So if it's signed, it proves that he's the one, or he or she is the person. And also, if if the envelope has not been tampered with, then it shows that it's authentic. So you want to be careful about that. So yeah, when it comes to the forms, that's all that you have to do. So I'm going to put the links to all these documents that I've mentioned in the description box so that you can easily have access to them. So if you have any questions, I'm going to be there to answer them. In my next video, I will explain how to fill the application forms. So if you have any difficulty, then don't worry, I'm going to explain the application form in detail, how to fill it. So thank you so much for staying tuned with me today. See you in my next video. Goodbye.